Nothing. It's a card from my dad.
What is it? Wait. Dear son, happy Festivus? What is Festivus?
It's nothing. It's nothing.
When George was growing up,
No.
his father hated all the commercial and religious aspects of Christmas, so he made up his own holiday.
All right.
And instead of a tree, didn't your father put up an aluminum pole?
Jerry, stop it.
But weren't there feats of strength that always ended up with you crying?
Can't take it anymore. I'm going to work. You happy now?
Welcome, newcomers.
I find your belief system fascinating.
The tradition of Festivus begins with the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're gonna hear about it.
Another Festivus miracle.
Another Festivus miracle indeed. Those of us audio pioneers of what California deems to be an essential business, we are PresbyCast, podcasting live on the internet radio. Thank you to everyone who's watching along with our stream and everyone who's listening in the car. I was talking about this with Mrs. Presbyterian yesterday. I was wondering how many listeners out there would be putting off listening to this until they could be in the car with their family, driving to wherever their governor says that they shouldn't go, just so that they can force their family to listen to this. But this is a time-honored tradition in belief system. This is at least the third annual, possibly even the fourth annual. And that is our Festivus Airing of Grievances episode. Whatever shall we talk about this year, gentlemen?
Another time-honored tradition is you having bad internet. And so grievance number one is Resby's internet. We know that sometimes
you can't steal mine. You
the
can't
raccoons,
steal mine.
They chew on the old internet wire, and there are deleterious consequences to that, but we're glad to have everyone with us. Resby, show ombudsman, Amish Ambush, many time previous guest, and out there in California, had a little technical difficulty. We'll see if he's back with us. And, well, that's Mr. Festivus himself, Dan Borvan. Are you with us?
Coming in hot. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're back where we need to be.
All right.
So everyone adjust back to the normal.
A Festivus miracle.
Yeah, that's good. We can hear. We can all hear each other now. So here we are, 2020. Grievances up to our necks. There's Dan's Festivus pole in the background.
Retractable.
Oh, yeah. See, it was an optical illusion. It looked like it was behind you, and it was right there all the time. Well, we've got a lot to talk about, and plenty of time to do it. Not in any big hurry. But how is everyone?
Fantastic.
And you said that you do have COVID cases in your church, Dan.
Yeah, we had one family recently got it at Thanksgiving, but they're all well. But our deacon, who's our main tech guy, has been out for a couple weeks. So the elaborate production quality that we have at our little URC is not quite up to our normal levels. So we had to turn off the smoke machine this week. We didn't have the light entrance. I usually come out to pyro, but that's all been squashed. So we're looking forward to getting back to full bore.
A lot of people don't know this about Dan, but he actually does a complete recreation of Goldberg's WCW entrances every Sunday. It's just many people didn't know this because they weren't live streaming until COVID. But it's really quite. I mean, the smoke through the nostrils and everything. It's impressive.
The whole consistory acts as the bodyguards, protecting me on the way out, and it's a full production.
Well,
it's the Genevan trunks that really get me. I don't know where you ever found them, but you look great in them.
Oh, thanks.
I figured you had a gold lame Genevan gown.
Yeah, I have multiple colors. Sometimes I'll go with a different outfit, depending on the mood. Usually I do a backflip down the aisle like James Brown and the Blues Brothers after the Goldberg entrance. So it's a full show.
Well, it's our first Blues Brothers reference. Maybe it won't be the last. That's the greatest movie ever made, as everyone knows. So, let me just start with a grievance. We're not formally into the airing of grievances now. I've talked about this many times before. Well, let me spin the story from the beginning. I'm at the early service. We've got 2 services for COVID. And I'm at the early service, filling in on the soundboard, which is just mute on mute, There's no band or anything. And I finished my duty. Service is over. I go home. I hung around for a while. In fact, I hung around to the start of the 11 o'clock service just to make sure everything was working. And it was, or it seemed to be, so I left. Got a few miles down the expressway, and my phone started blowing up. There's no audio on the live stream. So I made a quick U-turn, and what should delay me on the expressway? The rolling roadblock that they do every Sunday for the mega church that's between where I was and where I needed to go, which was back to the church to get the audio back on. And let's just say my sanctification, I took 2 steps back, as it were.
For just a minute, there was a 96th thesis.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I thought, I wonder if this rental after-hours deputy, I wonder if he has powers of arrest. And if I just blew by, and I was the first car behind him. He pulled out right in front of me, and I thought about just blowing by. But I don't know. I had something
Mason would approve.
Yeah, I wanted to jaywalk right down the road.
Did you wait to get to like an authorized U-turn place, or did you just like hang the U right there on the median through the grass?
No, I
throw some gravel, Dukes of Hazzard style.
I took the exit. I did okay, but I do have I do have Presbury, so I could have gone through the median had that been necessary. Well, Amish, you've had a friend with COVID. He's doing better. Oh, I haven't unmuted him. You're talking to no one. So your friend with COVID is he's doing okay.
Yeah, and I had this whole Dan's Deacons for Bump Machines joke, and I was just muted right out of that joke. So anyway, pretty scary. If you seem to have like any sort of high blood sugar or just slightly elevated blood sugar, like that stuff will really get its claws into you. So, but everything's well in the Yodaverse.
Well, we're glad to hear that. So, anything I guess we'll just go around with the grievances at some point. But I like to do little, you want to kind of prime the pump. So let's go ahead, because some of our listeners are devoted to this segment. Let's go ahead and do Fun with Baptist. That's always a good starting point. And, well, this is musical. It's not really a sermon, but I always think Dan can pick up some tips from his Southern brethren. So let's kick off Fun with Baptist.
Independent, fundamental, premillennial, King James Bible.
I'll edit that out. Wrong button. Here we go. Starting again.
Independent, fundamental, premillennial, King James Bible, believing, love right, talk right, don't cuss straight, shoot or run with them to do, hack and shout and spit, Baptist.
Welcome to Fun with Baptists on your favorite podcast, Presbycast. And now, Baptists.
Tonight. And so this verse will be for you, okay? I won't wear earrings, nose rings, or pearls. I won't have long hair like all the girls. I'll pull my pants up, my underwear I'll hide. 'Cause praise the Lord, I'm so alive. Play that! All right, ladies, we're not going to leave the ladies out. We're going to give the ladies one, too, okay? Here we go. Now she'll be the wife God wants her to be, and she'll wear her dresses down past her knees. She'll keep her mouth shut even when she's right, 'cause praise the Lord, she saw the light. She saw the light, he saw the light. We'll stop our sin and start doing right. We'll go to church even on Wednesday night, 'cause praise the Lord, we saw the light. Hallelujah right there.
All right, so that was the Hank Williams classic. I know that Hank's a big fixture in Amish's household. His kids certainly loved him when they were younger. But that's the I Saw the Light song with a few extra, well, moralistic verses added on. So, Dan, you all do anything like that out there in California?
Yeah, nothing says piety like singing a song by a serial adulterer and alcoholic who died at, what was he, 29 from alcoholism? So that's what I like to sing at church.
Well, now the last time...
Well, I was going to ask if you guys sing it, but you just sing it a cappella.
Well, exactly, yeah. It's the 151st Psalm that we sing.
Well, you know, the last time Hank's feet touched the ground alive, he was in Knoxville. He died between Knoxville and somewhere up in Virginia. So we could take you to the hotel that he stayed in.
I don't know that that says much for Knoxville.
It's one of the things we're most famous for.
Makes you want to die in a car on the way to West Virginia.
Oh, it's top 5.
They're dying to get out of there.
Oh boy. So I thought that was it was amusing anyway. And I thought we should be fair. We should do fun with liberal preachers. We should do fun with the woke. I'm going to come up with a name for this thing, but fun can't be in it because they're humorless.
Woke up, oh sleeper.
Yeah, they're humorless scolds, and well, there's nothing funny about the Baptists are at least funny, and some of them they're showmen and they know it, and they are really the professional. You know, those IFB preachers are the professional wrestlers of preaching, for better for better and worse. But I'm still working out this fun with with woke preachers thing. But some of you will remember this, our famous PCUSA General Assembly music. So this will sort of be our intro. It's really good. So let me set up this clip. We all know Christine Caine, charismatic Word of Faith, prosperity preacher who somehow gets platforms with people like John Piper sometimes, Ed Stetzer, people like that. I don't know why, but she has found herself on a kind of a struggle session online with a lady preacher or activist, I don't know who. And, well, if you listen carefully, you see that even old Christine, woke as she is, she kind of lost the plot, and it, well, you might even feel for her. So let's hear this.
So when it comes to what we think about God, we get that from our ethnic worldview. So I want to give you an example. If I had two ancient groups of people, two ancient tribes, and one tribe told a story about creation that said that God created every human being by hand from the ground, shaped every single person by hand. And when that God had enough people to make a village, he breathed life into them and the whole village came to life. And after that, he lived with the people and they were all just there together. He protected the people and helped the people. So we have that group of people. Then we have another group of people who, when their God made them, he made a man and a woman. He made them out of trees that were different. And then they became the parents of the world. And when they were done creating those two people, the gods left, went to live way up in the sky somewhere. They watch the people, and each day they decide who lives and who dies in battle. And that's their relationship. Which one of those groups of people is most likely to believe in law and order? A God who is a God of rules and law and order.
We cannot take a poll right now. So
No, I'm asking you what you think.
A or B? Oh, yeah. I've done this. You can tell us.
Okay. So the God who, in the culture where the God sits high and watches what everyone does and decides who lives and who dies, you're going to have a relationship with authority that's distant, that's far. You also have a group where when they made in two individuals and that was it, they're going to be more focused on the individual, right? So now I have two value systems from that. One that says that authority is high and looks low and determines life and death. And there's that which would be, I need to respect this authority a lot, right? Yeah. And the individual matters. But in the other group where the God made a whole bunch of people and then created a community, never mentions gender, and then lives with the people to protect them and provide for them, that group is likely to have a very relational view of authority. We're here together, we're relating with one another, and the authority is protective versus punitive.
All right, so I think the message there is that animistic tribal people have a better creation story than we do. Is that what you picked up, Dan?
Fun with animism. Not just for Catholics.
Yeah, poor Christine. You just heard her giggling there in the middle. She didn't know what to make of that, and boy, it was that there's a lot of that going on. So I guess most of us would agree that one of our grievances would be with the humorless woke scolds who intersectionally butcher theology and will create societal stress and strain and confusion.
Agree. They seem to just try to come up with things to complain about every day. I get on Twitter when I wake up in the morning and try to figure out what I'm outraged at this day. So it doesn't take long. You look at the woke scolds and there's something new that we can all be outraged about every morning. Our grievances were new every morning.
Well, they're so original too, because it's they're not predictable at all. That's a good thing. But yeah, that's one of the things that I don't know if you were hoping for the crisis and the societal disruption of COVID to moderate any of that. You were disappointed.
We had about 2 weeks there in April when wokeism kind of died down for a minute, and a lot of people were predicting now that we have a real problem, like a pandemic, our perceived problems will go away. But then the wokeism just came back full force in May. So we thought we had it licked, but the vaccine against wokeism didn't do it.
Listen, they're celebrating Festivus all year round. That's all they're doing. They're airing their grievances. They're doing it daily. These are just Festivus observers that just take the principle and do it all year.
There is no grievance over which the woke do not scream, mine.
That's the essence of intersectionality. You bring it all together, and everything is about oppression and grievance and, power and class conflict, I think. I'd mentioned this to Dan before, and of course, Resby. I think if you don't value liberty more highly after 11 months of 2020, I don't know that you ever will. So let's talk a little bit about the value of liberty in and of itself, Christian and civic. I've been thinking about this almost every day in this year. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, and it really is grievous to see so many who are not alarmed at a restriction of liberty. You know, if you told someone in December 2019 that we would have governors like our dear governor, Gavin, in California, dictating your Thanksgiving gathering, how close you can sit to grandma, whether or not you can sing at your holiday gatherings, no one would believe it. But it seems as if the majority of people are not concerned enough to push back against these infringements upon our liberty. Some are, but many are just going along hoping that if they obey, things will go back to normal.
We had a clip of Governor Newsom's motorcade. There we go. Oh no, that's a floating dumpster on fire. Sorry, I thought that was had something to do with Governor Newsom.
Gets confusing sometimes.
This joke is an insult to floating dumpsters on fire.
Well,
that could go up just from the grease in his hair.
Yeah, well, I don't watch a whole lot of news, so I don't have a good mental picture of the governor, but we're going to take your word for it.
Well, it's all too real here in California. We all have a mental picture.
It's like, imagine if Tommy Carcetti from The Wire became the governor.
Yeah, that's about right.
Ignoring the final credit scene of the show, but I've still got some friends back in California, in and around, where I grew up, and they're no more happier about him than you are, Dan. And it's funny that you remember, like, I remember watching all the bowl games like this time last year for college football, and then going into college basketball. I remember thinking, like, man, like, I'm really taking this for granted because this is the best year for sports ever, and we've got the whole year in front of us. Like, being super excited for March Madness and everything like that, and then all of a sudden, I think my biggest, like, maybe it was a pre-grievance, but like the last 2 weeks of March it was just a grievance 24 hours a day just to get out of bed and realize it. And I think now people are starting to, just kind of realize, and I know we said it on the show a lot, is people aren't the people who want to go out and go back to normal, there's no one at, holding somebody at gunpoint saying everybody has to go out now. If you still feel like you should be locked up, the essence of liberty is if you still feel like you should be locked up, then you should stay that way. And you have every right and every choice and every privilege to do that. We are fortunate to live in a society where you don't have to leave your house and you can still get all of your food and nutrition. That's a pretty great part of modern society. But for those of us who do want to go out, we're not asking for permission. We're saying we're going to go out now. And that's what's been so frustrating about it, is just this inability to let people make up their own decisions. Was it Hans Feeney had a tweet today? It was like, Bill Gates will go up on a news station and tell people that they have to lose their homes, they have to lose their businesses, and they have to go hungry so that they can help prevent a virus with a 99% survival rate. and he says it with a straight face, which is just insane.
Yeah, Bill Gates makes a trash product. I would never want to listen to him, take his advice on anything, especially not a Bill Gates vaccine. You know, I don't put his trash on my computer. I'm certainly not putting his trash in my body.
You're an Apple elitist.
Absolutely. They killed Steve Jobs, ran him out of Bayside.
For
10 years ago, we had hope, we had cash. Now,
for a goodly amount of people, I mean, this is paradise for them. You know, I had a friend make an observation. The same friend that you know just got over COVID, that not having to leave your home to go to work. You've got a ready-made excuse to not go hang out with anybody. You can just sit in your home and not have any communication with anybody. Like it's paradise for some people.
Well, I think I've seen that, and the thing is, but what you've also seen is that all of the people who were joking around like earlier about being locked up is that they were just like, oh, I don't go out of the house anyways. I don't want to see people anyways. All of those people realized within about 10 days that they're a lot more extroverted than they claim to be. And introversion, while a real personality type, also sort of had like a cultural moment as like something the cool kids all of a sudden were for a little while. And misanthropy sort of had like a similar moment as well. But it's one thing when you can kind of like, allow that to be all of a sudden when it became uniform of everybody, everyone realizes like, oh, this sucks. And so I've noticed that a lot of those jokes have kind of died out. And, my wife is not a sports fan and she's worked from home for years. And even she's felt it was like all of a sudden not being able to, like, on the days when you feel like going outside and being around people, all of a sudden to not be able to, now you've eliminated not only the rule, but also the exceptions to the rule. And that makes it so much harder.
Yeah, I rolled up to McDonald's a couple of weeks ago, and the dining room was closed. And it said because of local orders, which was not true. I think they just took a cookie cutter approach. Everyone downloaded a sign that McDonald's corporate made for them. There were no such orders. But it was, I don't know, it hit me. It was terribly discouraging that McDonald's wasn't open. And that you had to use the drive-thru.
Our Wendy's did that. Our Wendy's had been open for months, like since May, when everything kind of opened back up restaurants wise, and then it was closed down for like a week after our codfish of a governor gave his most recent speech going into Thanksgiving about it. But then it opened back up, and so unfortunately, the Burger King around the block also reopened. Sanctification is a slow process.
In-N-Out's been open nonstop, and you know this because California is not burning down right now. If they close In-N-Out, we actually might get rid of our governor, but he wisely kept it open. So here we are.
All right, well, I've got a list. I'll go through my list. Everybody may have one, and we've got other things to talk about. We'll put on the screen shortly. Let me go through my list, and it will prompt further discussion. I think my biggest grievance is against I'm going to call it COVID gaslighting, because I don't know who to believe. I find myself mistrusting just about everyone. I don't think I trust Dr. Fauci any more than I trust Alex Jones at this point. People are going to get a vaccination, but it's only going to protect for 3 months, they say, maybe. And a vaccination, and you can still spread it after you've had the vaccination, which doesn't make any sense. Vaccinations have never worked like that before, and that could be true, but I think there's so much that our leaders don't know, And when they don't know, they go ahead and say something anyway. And it may not be nefarious or cynical, but it's not competent at the very least. So that's I'm very irritated by media, government, and maybe in some cases organizational communications, messaging, and directions.
Well, if Fauci ever did have any credibility, he threw it out the window with his horrific first pitch at the Nationals game. So I can't believe anybody who has such a rag arm as that guy.
Yeah, it was
and
bad.
then spent the entire game in the stands with his mask off, sitting right next to somebody.
Yeah, if you're like 4'8" with a rag arm, you don't get a microphone, man.
Don't you think it's just a symptom of just everything is politicized? I mean, like, my gosh, like it is like everything from, going out and enjoying a dinner to. That's why we can't get a straight answers because, people are wanting to politicize this, and the answers that you get depends on what political party that you follow. So there's nothing that is that. So there is nothing that is not politicized anymore. It's just crazy. It's nuts, and it's like, what's truth? Whatever's expedient for me.
There were a couple weeks before everything got really stupid in March, where I think you had some kind of blended conversations. I mean, obviously it's funny to look back on it now and see people like, Representative Swalwell saying, "Don't wear a mask, stop wearing a mask." Or you've got, places like Vox running the pieces about like, "Don't worry about coronavirus. Here's why you should worry about the flu instead," before going completely 180, in the coming weeks. But it was like, there were moments where you could kind of look at it and it's a shame that it's gotten so politicized about the discussion, because it essentially, my issues with our governor isn't the fact that he's a Democrat candidate. My issues with the governor are that he's repressed liberty and not allowed people to make their own decisions and assess the risks that it takes. So it doesn't matter if it's President Trump doing that. It doesn't matter if it's Governor Newsom doing that. The issue is what they're doing, not who's doing it. And so there was, as soon as it became like a Trump or not Trump thing, we really lost any like ability to have an intelligent discussion about it, because especially when you look, at least at a certain point, Colorado was as open as Florida was, but nobody was talking about Colorado. Everyone was talking about Florida, and it was frustrating because you couldn't make anyone believe it. And then at the same time, you had everyone who hates corporations and thinks corporations are evil all of a sudden thinking that they're canceling March Madness because of like some sort of altruism and protectiveness, when it was very clearly a liability lawyer saying like, "Yo, dudes, we could get sued and never have this again." So that was frustrating. Is just to be like, when are you going to acknowledge this is real? It's like, I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying we're going about it the wrong way.
Okay.
And
do you think? Remiss. Hold on, I got to break in. The lawyer said we had to play this, and I played it late last time when we talked about these things. So let's do this, and then you go, Amish.
Presbycast, its guests, lackeys, hangers-on, and callers are not medical professionals and are not qualified to give medical advice. However, you are listening to Presbycast, so the odds that you will make a bad decision and disregard prudent warnings are very high. So never mind. There is little hope for you anyway.
First off, I am a graduate of San Diego State University in communications, which I completed in 4 years, which is quite impressive. So I'm an excellent communicator and am authorized to communicate all of the ideas that I communicate henceforth vis-a-vis.
I'm more of a doctor than Jill Biden, so I can opine on anything I want.
Yeah, we actually have a doctor on the show. We have a
Yeah. A doctor in education is like a doctor of ministry. I have an actual doctor of philosophy, so I trump her.
Well, you know what the difference is between Shaquille O'Neal and Julius Erving is, right? Shaq's an actual doctor. People forget he's got his ED. So if it's Dr. Jill Biden, it's Dr. Shaquille O'Neal. So someone passed the memo to Charles Barkley.
Noted. Do you guys think, like, you remember like 9/11 happened and just like how the country had come together? There's a sense of unity. Like, I feel like if that happened today, like that would not happen. I think it would immediately turn to finger pointing. There's no sense of being a country together anymore. What do you guys think about that?
I'm sure we probably all agree that things are much more divisive since the mid-2000 teens than since 2014, 2015, and well, the chickens came home to roost, as what was his name? Obama's
Jeremiah
pastor.
Wright.
Jeremiah Wright, as he was wont to say.
Well, the good thing is when China invades and takes over, they'll unite all of us. And if we don't unite, we'll all be in boxcars anyway. So either way, we're united.
Well, they're coming to California first.
Yeah, I'm working on my Mandarin because I'm going to welcome them on the beach, arms open.
I've already seen the scene in Independence Day. The building gets vaporized.
Okay, so I want to throw something out. I talked about the COVID gaslighting, intentional or unintentional, the confusing nature of a crisis and kind of a slow motion train wreck. When I was a kid, I was born in 65, so early 70s. I'm 7 years old, 72. My dad always had a stack of books, and he had every book that was written about Watergate. He had stacks of books about Vietnam. And he probably also had books about, the Kennedy assassination and things like that. He was trying to make sense of things. Everyone knew, during Vietnam that it was bad, but in the middle of it, you couldn't really assess it. And after Watergate, people, there were 1,000 opinions on it, and it was, of course, obviously politicized. And he was trying to make sense of those things, and we're going to be trying to make sense of what's happened in the last year and what will continue to happen. I'm pretty sure for another year. It's going to be a long time before we figure out what happened, what should have happened, and
Watergate was what? I mean, 1968.
No. It's early 70s. It's
72.
Yeah,
election.
72.
Nixon did nothing wrong.
I was going to say it took almost 50 years for us to realize that not only was he framed, he did nothing wrong and is our greatest president. So,
one of us on this panel might have been to the Nixon Library in nearby Yorba Linda.
One of us on this panel might have had his prom at the Reagan Library.
Ooh, very nice place.
Well, it was before.
Which is a gorgeous location.
Yeah. Did you dance on Air Force One?
I was in high school.
Slow dance on Air Force One?
It was not. It actually was not. It wasn't there yet. They had like the facility built for it, but they hadn't moved in the jet. So it was just a big like glass, like overlooking of all the hills and whatnot. The problem was it was only like a 10-minute drive from our high school, so everyone got super excited and rented all these limos for a 10-minute drive. But we did go through the Wendy's drive-through on the way back, so got to get a Frosty.
So drive-thrus have been no fun during COVID. And the lines have been terrible. And those 2-lane drive-thrus where you have to merge and people have to let you in, that rarely works well. They've raised and are rebuilding the Chick-fil-A temple in my town. So that's been avoided, but it's put a lot more stress on all the other fast food restaurants. But I will give a shout out, feat of strength to the fast food employees, because I will say that they do seem to be cheerful and happy for the work, and I think they've generally done a good job, better than most. So I'll salute them.
Yeah.
Well, as if Chick-fil-A didn't need any more treasury of merit. An OPC by us in Orange County is actually meeting in a Chick-fil-A parking lot on Sunday mornings. So not only is it God's chicken, they're giving up their parking lot for the gospel.
Well, I'm sure it's quite an experience.
And every Lord's Day, when the people who don't realize Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday pull into the driveway, my friend, the OP pastor, tries to evangelize them.
Open.
It's a miracle. I'm post-mill now, as they say. Another grievance I have is cucumbers in all their forms. Silent killer. They should be eradicated.
I have a grievance with that grievance.
Yeah, I knew you would. You like pickles, but
Cucumber water is great.
oh gosh.
It's okay. I have a grievance. Is somebody cutting their nails right now? What is that clicking sound that's happening every like 10 or 15? Or is it? Am I the only one hearing it?
No, Dan's probably clicking his pen or something. Nervous tick. No, who knows what it is.
I'm blaming Ranger. He can't speak English to defend him.
You're being gaslit.
Presby Dog is not in here tonight. Another grievance. It seems with the addition of Advent, and we've got Lent and Easter, that Protestants have become Roman Catholic for almost half of a year these days. Got a little problem with that. And well, I tell you what, we've got a message from listener Babu. This is a good time to. It's a good contrast to our griping. Let's hear what he couldn't join us because he has to get up early early to go to work. But let's hear what he has to say.
Is this thing on? Okay. Greetings, Presby friends. Babu here. I regret that I am unable to join you in person tonight, but I shall offer my Festivus airing of grievances in this manner, and I don't have any problems with any of you. So happy Festivus. Merry Christmas. Joyous New Year. And for Odd Deacon, happy Advent, buddy.
Yeah, we all know that Odd Deacon is a anti-Advent jihadi. We'll just leave it at that.
Babu sounds like he's got the Rona.
No, that's just him. He's
permanent Rona.
Oh yeah.
Based on his employment, he's probably been immune to coronavirus for longer than any of us, and I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, he works in waste management, so he's been exposed to everything, and
like when Pennywise the clown sees Babu in the sewer, Pennywise goes the other way. Like
well, he cleans up okay. He's been here. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, another grievance, just the low regard that people seem to have for liberty, whether it's Christian or civil, in this year. I mean, what would Machen do? I think Machen would. Well, he had to be turning over in his grave a few times. But we don't have any advocates of liberty on par with Machen these days. It's
I think it is 100% certain that if Machen was still at Princeton during COVID, he would have gotten censured by every other division for having students over in his apartment to smoke cigars and drink root beer and watch, because there were no sports on.
He'd be teaching
But,
Greek from his front porch.
Oh, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think there's any question that he would, maybe even set up a autonomous zone, the Machen autonomous zone, the MAZ.
The DAS autonomous zone. DAZ.
I don't think there's any doubt that he would always keep a cooler of root beer on his porch for students to come in and grab and shoot the breeze and complain about all of their other professors who were going insane. And I think he would kind of enjoy the apocalypse a little bit. Maybe
I think Machen might hike up the side of a mountain and just wait out the tyranny.
Yes, that could be what he would have done. So feats of
sounds
strength.
A little monastic, though.
Yeah,
I think he would have founded a seminary on the side of a mountain.
Yeah, he would have taken a crew up there with him, and they would be the most well-trained guys after 3 years on the mountain with Machen.
So you mentioned
I think that was the plot to Batman Begins.
You mentioned monasticism, and I've been beating the drum for a few years that we're going to see monasticism in Protestantism, and there have been hints of it in Gospel Coalition articles, and the Revoice movement has had some people associated with it who sort of have hinted at it, and I don't know when it's really going to get publicized, but there is in a southern city a Protestant monastery of bachelors, and you're probably going to hear more about that. And to me, it was obvious that it was coming, and it does exist. So that's a grievance. Protestants who aren't, and I think we want to be Protestants if we are Protestant.
Well, this will be different than all previous forms of monasticism. And instead of going into seclusion behind the wall, that these will be the attention-starved evangelicals who have a 24-hour live stream of their monastic hours. You can tune in online, check them out praying, working the fields, sitting in silence. This will not be seclusion. This will be broadcast for all. And it certainly won't be silent because they're going to talk nonstop about it.
Well, I don't know many details, but I'm telling everyone you're going to hear a little more about monks in the coming months at some point. I feel certain somebody's going to shine a little light on that.
If they take a vow of silence, written and verbal, I'm perfectly okay with them going into monastic orders.
Well, that's one of the options, I believe. Feats of strength. A lot of people have worked really hard at a lot of churches to make things go and work. I'm sure Dan can vouch for that. I'm thinking of a particular elder that I'd never had to work very closely with before, and I've just found out he's a great guy and has meant a lot to me. Been very helpful. So that's one good thing I've discovered in 2020. But probably everyone has a story about a friend or a fellow church member or church officer who's really gone beyond the call of duty to make things work. But it's been very difficult. It's been very stressful on your church leaders, no matter who you are. And we've made mistakes. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I think the thing about COVID is it's really put everything under a magnifying glass, is that it's made good churches better and it's made bad churches worse. And I don't think that's just from I'll use the term session or elders just because, we're Presbyterian. I understand that not everyone has a true organization and correct government of their church. But, I think that does trickle down into the pews as well, is that, to see the session and the elders really racking themselves over how to meet safely, how to, in a lot of ways, accommodate any possible in a realistic way, all the while not trying to like or down what we are as a church and what we're supposed to be doing has been really admirable. And I know it has spurred additional fellowship between families at our church where we weren't normally getting together or seeing them quite as often. And now all of a sudden we're like, well, getting out of church, going over, COVID crime, going over to someone's house and spending additional time, with the families, if a kid's sick, obviously stay home and things like that. But I think a feat of strength is a good way to put it. And we've had it relatively easy. We've been back meeting indoors since May. I know you guys, Amish and Chortles, you guys have been about that same amount of time. And obviously hearing from Dan, our situation is not everywhere still.
Another group I've admired are some of those elderly people who are high risk by all accounts, but they've decided just to go ahead and live.
Yep.
All right, I cut out there. They've just, they show up at church, and even though sometimes we think maybe, you're the one person who shouldn't be here, but you can't keep some of them away. And I think the old people have acquitted themselves better than some of our younger people.
Yeah, I would agree. When we first came back for in-person worship at the end of May, our elders discussed maybe not inviting the vulnerable for their own safety. Luck. And then, exactly. Then we decided, no, our health would be in danger from some of the great older saints in our congregation. So we should probably just open it up to them, lest we get a right cross when they did see us. So, yeah, they've been some of the most faithful in our congregation, the most vulnerable. There's nothing that would keep them from the gathering of the body of Christ. But it's really been our whole congregation has come together as a feat of strength. Just amazing how so many have stepped up, not only our deacons and elders, but everyone really in the congregation. We currently, don't tell Gavin, are indoor-outdoor. So we have an outdoor setup with chairs and a video monitor. And then we also have indoor seating. I'm inside. And we have one guy who has been coming and helping set up the outdoor seating. And then he goes home to watch with his elderly mother-in-law to watch the stream. He's not even there for church, but he comes to set up. And he's not even been a member he's been a member less than a year. So stories like that, just remarkable how so many have recognized the need and stepped up. And we are so grateful. I mention really at least once a month to our congregation how gracious God has been to us, that we don't have some of the division that you see in other churches. I hear horror stories from my pastor friends. And our congregation, only by God's grace, has been immune to that. We're very united, very strong spirit of peace in our congregation. So we're very grateful.
That's good and good to hear. So any other feats of strength that anyone wants to commend?
I think lest all we do is bash elected officials, while that does come instinctively and naturally straight out of the womb, I do think that we should give a feat of strength to Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, for saying that they would not lock down again, and in all likelihood may even host a WrestleMania in Tampa next year. So it's Florida has, well, it sort of already was for myriad reasons, has really become a beacon of freedom for professional wrestling as well as anything else you'd love to do.
But you know, if there's any state where you could afford to cull the herd, you know, that's sort of Florida, wouldn't you think?
This is 2020 is a year of firsts for me, and I've tried to be open and vulnerable about my brokenness and having to give credit where it's due. So there are, again, I had to give kudos to the ACC conference for saying they were going to go ahead and play football. I've had to give kudos to Jim Harbaugh for saying the Big Ten should be playing football. That was literally the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And as such, I've also done a complete 180 on the state of Florida. As the kids say, actually, Florida is good. At this point, I'm all in on Florida. I'm currently.
So you're buying a jet ski and a meth lab, and you're going full blown Florida man.
I'm currently looking at multiple parcels of land near Boca.
Phase 2.
I've been binging Siesta Key since quarantine started. So I mean, we're just gonna go all in. I can't wait. I'm gonna run Carol Baskin out of town. Also, grievance. She is still free. Our king Joe is still framed behind bars.
Trump's going to pardon him on his way out of town.
I want the ultimate feat of strength would be Trump Joe Exotic while officially acknowledging Taiwan at the same time.
It's about equal.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, I've got a grievance.
All right, let's hear
it. In the days when people are waking up to the idea of voter fraud, why has my hometown Chicago not gotten any credit? I mean, we didn't invent voter fraud, but we certainly perfected it since 1837. And I don't hear anyone crediting Chicago for leading the way in voter fraud for well over a century. Not one bit of credit.
Well, I think a lot of younger people don't know that there's a theory that Kennedy would not have defeated Nixon in '60 if not for the Daily Machine.
Oh, it's not a theory. It's fact. You're welcome, America. We postponed Richard Nixon for 8 years. We gave you
Camelot.
We gave you Camelot, and not one bit of thanks. Sam Giancana put Kennedy in the White House, and nobody thanks us. You know, I may or may not have rigged the vote when they voted for me to be their pastor here, but it was on my mind for sure as a native Chicagoan. We don't go into any election straight up. Never get any credit. We get no respect.
Well, that's who can argue?
I mean, it's not like Chicago's in a golden age anyway, you know. So we need a little bonus, a little appreciation. You know, of course, we're leading the country in murders, and the weather's horrible, and our sports teams stink. So it'd be nice to get a little gratitude for our voter fraud capabilities.
I got to say, out of all the years that I voted multiple times, this was the hardest to do it as well. So for those of you concerned about voter fraud, safeguards, were in place to try to prevent me from doing that. And I had to work a lot harder to vote multiple times this year, as opposed to the last midterms.
Well, speaking of grievances, here's one that Dan said he had. I've got a visual cue on the screen. Headline: Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church got $4.4 million in federal Paycheck Protection Plan (PPP) loans. We've already noted on the show, in a previous show, that nearly every Reformed seminary took the money. They may not have used it. They may have paid it all back. But there was a surprising number of religious organizations that took a lot of money or reserved a lot of money that they may or did or didn't use through this federal program. So, Dan, are you renovating your house with some sweet federal money?
Yeah, the URC's not quite on the top of the list for those PPP loans. Joel's probably got some lobbyists on speed dial, but we don't really know anybody in the political scene here. I don't care that Joel took the cash. He's no different than TV show or any other production. But the fact that this is drawing attention to the tax-exempt status of churches is what's bothering me. We're going to get the fallout from this clown's publicity for taking these loans. People are waking up to the idea that mega churches don't pay property tax, and old Joel in his basketball arena is dodging quite a bit of property tax. So I think it's going to come back to bite the rest of us in the Christian sphere.
Yeah, I actually think church officers, treasurers, deacons should just go ahead and start budgeting it as if we had to pay taxes, because it's not unlikely that will come to us. Maybe not. That'd be a big political hurdle for anybody to, given the number of people that still go to church and still, a lot of taxpayers go to church, but it could happen. I think the threat of it will be out there.
Listen, that globe on stage is not going to gold plate itself, okay? So you guys just need to settle down a little bit.
He needed $1 million of that PPP to whiten his teeth.
Well, you haven't followed this, Dan, but one of our favorite IFB preachers, Preacher Phil Kidd, up in Upper East Tennessee, he's also an entrepreneur, and he has opened he's got a new rug or hair replacement or something, and he's opened a hair replacement clinic because he has an honorary doctorate from someone. He puts on a white coat, calls himself Dr. Phil. And they also do teeth whitening. So he's opened a cosmetic clinic, and I can see him on my local cable TV. He's quite the showman. He often shows up on Fun with Baptists, but he's doing well in 2020.
Well, all that sweet tea will make your teeth turn brown, so you got to get them whitened there by Dr. Phil.
Well, Mountain Dew, that's good stuff for the teeth too.
Diet Mountain Dew keeps the cavities away.
Okay, here's another thing that might hurt churches' tax exempt status. It's our good old friend Carl Lentz, and he's pretty much history there at Hillsong, New York.
Well, he's history in New York, but rumor is he moved out to my neighborhood, so that's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, he decided to rehabilitate himself right here in south of Los Angeles. So I'm gonna look for him in the neighborhood. Any guy in skinny jeans and a deep V, I'm on the lookout for. Maybe we can become friends. I'll be his new Bieber.
Yeah, he's a friend of Bieber. And friends of Lentz were Justin Bieber, Chris Pratt,
reformed
Kevin
bad
Durant.
boy Justin Bieber, please and thank you.
Yes, we made much of that. So this is an article in the Spectator, and it's talking about the travails of Hillsong and Lentz. Hillsong, of course, started in Australia, but it was written by a non-Christian who'd had some involvement with church earlier in his life, and as Dan said, this was the best article on this written by anyone. Certainly better than you would get from a Big Eva organ.
We should give a feat of strength to the Spectator U.S. edition because they've been doing great work since they opened.
Yeah, let me read the final paragraph, and we can talk about this. The writer says about Carl Lentz, the disgraced boy model Hillsong pastor. I'm not religious, so it's not my place to dictate to Christians what they should and should not believe. Still, if someone has a faith worth following, I feel that their beliefs should make me feel uncomfortable. That's italicized, for not doing so. In other words, if they're truly distinctive, I'll feel different and uncomfortable for not being like them. He continues, if they share 90% of my lifestyle and values, then there is nothing especially inspiring about them. Instead of making me want to become more like them, it looks very much as if they want to become more like me. That, sadly, appears to have been true of Lentz and his celebrity acquaintances. And that's pretty heavy stuff. And we've all heard good Christian teachers and preachers and writers say similar things, that there should be an offense at some level. Our church services maybe even should make people feel uncomfortable and out of place if they're truly scriptural, if they're conducted with reverence and awe. They're going to be different than anything else you do during the week. But the goal of most churches is to be as non-uncomfortable as they can be. I came across something I actually watched Sunday afternoon, the full service of the megachurch whose roadblock inconvenienced me, and they say they mostly use stock phrases, and they just repeat their values over and over. And one of them is, we'll do anything short of sin to reach people. And that's not even original with them. They ripped that off from the lifechurch.tv guy, Craig Greschel. Apparently they invented that. But that's the typical megachurch MO. We'll do anything short of sin to reach people.
Well, you can slog your way through a lot of bad taste before you get to sin, so yikes.
Yeah, and, we all know that everyone agrees on what sin is, and that megachurches have a great understanding of the law of God. So there's nothing wrong. Surely the sin barrier should be plenty in this case.
Well, as the great Hank Hill said, you're not making Christianity better. You're making rock and roll worse.
Well, see, that's what bothered me about this article. In the very second paragraph, the guy worried me. He said, some of the Christian rock was pretty good. Now, that ruined all his credibility for me right there. But he did, to his credit, he worked his way back and ended on a high note, as Chortles read. But the fact that he said some Christian rock was pretty good, like, I'm questioning your judgment right there, man.
I don't know, that early 90s Petra.
Well, I'm often amazed at, and with a lot of contemporary church music, how poor it is. I mean, it's just not very good, but people seem to love it, and I don't know. It's
well, people love Nickelback too, but that doesn't mean it's good.
Yeah, it's perplexing to me.
Well, I think you're right, Chortles. You see all the surveys of non-Christians when they do actually visit a church. They want it to look like a church. They don't want it to look like a lame soft rock concert or some fake movie remake or movie theme of the night. They want it to feel like a church with, organ and stained glass and all those types. That's what they're expecting when they come to a church, finally. And so instead of giving them some lousy faux rock concert, why don't we actually portray a real church service that the unbeliever can witness? And there should be discomfort for the unbeliever when he enters into a true worship service. We are literally entering another world. We're welcomed into the throne room of heaven, clothed in the righteousness of Christ. God speaks to us the very word of God through the mouth of the minister. It is as if Jesus himself were standing there speaking to you the very word of God. We're eating the body and drinking the blood of Christ. This is literally otherworldly. It should be jarring and uncomfortable for the unbeliever. We should not try to make them feel as if they're in a movie theater or at a rock concert. They should recognize that something otherworldly is taking place.
Well, that's where the fog machine comes in, I guess. Well, And so anyway, there's a grievance. I mean, we do tend to beat up on the mega church, and we Odd Deacon and I attended this church. They're At the Movies series, which is also like a franchise. You can buy it. Nothing original there, but I worry about our neighbors who go to these churches. I don't think it's just less good or less than ideal. I'm afraid sometimes it's positively injurious to the spiritual life and souls of people.
Well, you're right. And you see that with the high turnover. These churches all have great difficulty in keeping people long term. You have your core group that will be there forever, but there's always constant turnover of those on the periphery. And that's why they have to keep drawing more people in, because there's always people going out.
And that's true to some extent with most churches, but yeah, it's a retail model. You know, it's churn. And I knew somebody that was a member of a church like this years ago, and he said they pretty much tell us, we don't care what the members think of what we're doing. It's all about bringing new people in. And if you don't like the music or the way we do things, just go ahead and leave. Because after we get you in here, we're not about you. Now, I know in some of these churches, just like Southern Baptists considered that the heavy lifting was done in Sunday school. Now that's left to small groups, or maybe some advanced courses, you know, where you actually get into some theology in some of these churches. But I think we here all believe that the most important thing the church does is when they gather for corporate worship on the Lord's Day. That's when the means of grace are most efficacious and present and available. And it's just a totally different conception of what church is, how it works, and really how the Spirit works. You know, how the benefits of Christ are applied to us, or maybe even if they are. You know, if it's mechanistic, or if it's something you can deliver with great graphics and clips and good music, it's a different thing, even that they're delivering. So,
well, they might not care about what their members think, but they certainly care if they're continuing to give, I'm sure. We're all about the bringing in the unbeliever, but don't forget your weekly check into the church to keep this machine going. But yeah, you're right. Even, I don't know what Willow Creek is doing now, but back in the day, they used to tell their members not to come on the weekends. They had to come during the week so that for their weekend services, the seekers would have room to show up.
As I recall, Spurgeon would tell people not to come to the Sunday night services for that reason. Maybe that's a little more understandable or laudable, but yeah, that's it's different than we're used to. I'll say that much. So the very definition of theology comes into question with the next thing we'll put on the screen. Gospel Coalition, they had a story or a piece by Colin Hanson, who's a nice guy, I think. My top 10 theology stories of 2020. But the only weird thing was...
Theology, we should say, is doing some Olympian-level weightlifting in that title, by the way.
Yeah. So let's run through them quickly. Some of them we're going to agree with, and of course he laments the problems of COVID, as any normal person would. I didn't care much for this line. Let me read it. A good old-fashioned debate on the Trinity would come as a welcome relief to churches battered and beleaguered by COVID wars. And, COVID's bad, but I think Trinitarian heresies might be worse.
Rethinking the Nicene Creed is probably worse than COVID.
Yeah, and I think he would agree, but I think he was just trying to say a theological
I get what
dispute.
he's trying to say. He just should have chosen literally any other point of actual theology to do it with.
I'll take COVID over Arius coming back from the dead any day.
So anyway, look, I wanted to touch on that line, but let me move down to the 10 to 1, the top 10 theology stories. Now, what I've often found when people in religious conflict, maybe denominational debates, when they start blaming social media for things, it usually means they're losing, or there's something that's coming out that they don't really want to be discussed. So their number 10 theology story: social media creates a dilemma for users. Maybe they just mean Facebook, and we all agree it should go to the lower parts of the earth. But when the media starts getting blamed, it's usually, I don't know, it's usually a tell to me that things just aren't going your way. So, but anyway, social media is a theological issue. Apparently.
Maybe the dilemma is to parlor or not to parlor.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't see any dilemma. I mean, Twitter is for owning libs and Baptists, so I think it's pretty clear cut.
All right, number 9. What story does fertility tell of faith? Okay, this is, I don't want to be crass, but TGC, they sometimes delve into the mommy blog issues, but that's not what this is. This is about a decreased birth rate. And, at the same time, we have city churches that have no children in them and lots of singles. And we promote things like Revoice, which are not likely to increase our fertility and reproduction rates. But anyway, that's
why not,
apparently, but we could talk about that later.
What about the monastic orders?
That too. So I'm just saying this is a bit ironic. And then number 8 was just a book by one guy. And thousands of readers discover Jesus to be gentle and lowly. And I think a lot of people alarmed by 2020 believe that people are too individualistic and too pugilistic and too argumentative. But I think my counter would be that there have been some pretty important things to argue over in the last year. But anyway, this is a book by Dane Ortland, who's now a PCA minister. That's good. His father no longer is. But anyway, his book, Gentle and Lowly, that's number 8. All right, let's move on down.
I wonder how Jesus feels about only being number 8 on a top 10 list.
Meek and lowly. Okay, number 7. Ravi Zacharias comes under closer scrutiny after death. Again, not really theological. A lot of these are more ecclesial, to be honest. But I don't think any of us are too interested in Ravi's problems. And he was a celebrity of sorts, and we know that celebrity Christian issues are not ever surprising.
Well, to me, one of the worst things about that is it just reveals the culture with these abuse cases. Over and over again, people cover it up. They know about it. They don't confront the issue. Surely people knew what he was doing long before it came out. And yet they covered for him probably for years. Whether it's C.J. Mahaney and his group, Sovereign Grace, or other scandals in the church, the crimes are horrific, and the cover-up is also horrific.
Yeah, and there are warning signs. I mean, if you look at Carl Lentz, at any time in the past 10 years, you knew that was going to go wrong. He was just dripping something that wasn't right. And,
swagger is what he was dripping.
It was
Ric Flair drip.
And then,
that's body spray.
but Ravi Zacharias.
Ric Flair drip go woo.
Ravi Zacharias owned a string of massage parlors, basically, or he was part owner of
which is not unusual for pastors.
Okay,
to moonlight as massage parlor moguls. I mean, it's almost a cliche at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got at least 3 nail salons here in South Los Angeles that
Oh, it's all outreach. So anyway, people usually
people
tell us
spa evangelism.
People just keep being surprised that people with foundations and organizations named after them are then acting improperly. Like, this happens every time. Like, all of them. It happens every time. If you name something after yourself, at some point, you're going to be the reason it stops existing. But hey, more power to him. A lot of money in those nonprofits, I hear. Did we ever find out? Did he take any payment protection plan?
Well, he was dead too early for that, but
okay.
I don't know about the rest of them.
Okay, number 6, J.I. Packer dies at 93. So I think we all know he was an important guy. And there's also going to be an incredible dearth of blurbs for book jackets now.
Well, the rumor is he has over 20,000 blurbs already in the archive that will be coming out over the next few years. He's even blurred books that haven't been written yet. So look for that. Like the Tupac cachet that came out after his death, the J.I. Packer book blurbs will be prolific.
Crossway is just going to leave like a ceremonial blank space on the first couple pages.
Okay, and the next one, Supreme Court redefines sex to include sexual orientation and gender identity, is actually spun as a shot at President Trump, because it says Trump's nominee Gorsuch had been hailed for all these good things, but he made this mistake in using doing some unhelpful things with the concepts of sexual orientation and gender identity. And I'd say with our new administration, they may make hay with some of these things. It'll be a very inclusive administration. We can be sure of that. So that's kind of a current event. Here's some theology. Jerry Falwell Jr. forced to resign as president of Liberty University. Pretty sure there wasn't much theology there, but I'm pretty sure that Jerry Jr. Was busy telling us who he was before it all came crumbling down. So I think some of my advice would be believe your eyes and common sense when it comes to some of these things. And
I mean, we talked earlier about Liberty taking a hit, and I mean, you can't even have a school named Liberty and not take a hit in 2020.
All right, then the third theology story is George Floyd's death, and the wave of protest. And I didn't hear a lot of good theology or theologizing connected with the riots and the aftermath of that. And especially there weren't a lot of, I guess that's arguably theology, but it's not theology. It's things Christians talked about, which is really what this list is. So now we get into the Presbyterian section. President Trump loses re-election, although we know that before he lost, and maybe this is the reason he lost, he formally renounced Presbyterianism and said that he was now a megachurch Christian. And we all know what the aftermath was.
Just like every megachurch individual, the fall was great.
All right, so we all know about the presidential election, and then their number one theology story is COVID-19. And again, as those who believe strongly in the sovereignty of God, but also His goodness and power, certainly we know that God's not surprised by COVID-19, but we can certainly still have questions about the way our fellow creatures handle it, and it's still important. So,
Yeah, I mean, you have to appreciate this list for what it is. Is like just when we're at the end of what many consider will be, the year of our lives. Here comes Colin Hansen, and I don't think he meant to do it intentionally, but like, hey, everything that sucked in one place, now process it again all at once
in a list.
Like
well,
there's so much potential to just be like, hey, here's some good things that happened that you might not have heard enough about. Like he could have done 10 of those stories, but instead it was like, hey, think on this more.
How about more Trump and COVID? You haven't had enough of that.
Now,
I was just thinking, I haven't heard about them in the last minute.
So here's a question that this one raises, Dan, and it's a good one. Do you think COVID, because of the whole not being able to gather and the online church and the restrictions on worship, did it actually help us think about worship and get better at it and understand it more, or did it just make it all worse?
I think it was extremely polarizing. I think many have recognized the critical importance of gathering together as the body of Christ on the Lord's Day in person, and the fellowship of the body, and hearing the preached word, receiving the sacrament. So for many who may have, maybe got a little complacent or just it hasn't been at the forefront of their minds, being deprived of that, even for a few weeks, I think stirred up the souls of many to recognize the tremendous importance and something that they're willing to die for. They're willing to risk death to gather with the church on the Lord's Day and receive the means of grace. The other end of the spectrum were many who decided that was even of less importance than they had thought before. Many churches, including Saddleback, Rick Warren's church, have been permanently shuttered for the entirety of 2020 after March, not making any effort whatsoever to gather together for in-person worship, solely online. Sadly, they've just decided that in-person worship isn't critical, and we can replace it all with a live stream.
All right, so there's a good line here at the end of this one. Time will tell which practices, especially video church, will move from contingency to permanent strategy when this pandemic finally abates. So we said back in March that there were going to be a certain percentage of people at most evangelical churches who weren't coming back, and I think we're going to see that. I don't think there's any doubt. I started reading about that, and I don't know, religious press. It seems like only in maybe late summer, but it should be obvious. If your church already has an online campus, as many do, if your campuses, your multiple sites, if they're getting the service piped in by on big screens anyway, you're almost not there anyway. So it's pretty easy to just go ahead and completely disconnect.
Yeah, you mentioned lifechurch.tv earlier. They've been doing online only for years.
Right.
And now other churches have recognized how lucrative it is. And again, we're not going to gather in person, but be sure to send in your giving. One thing that doesn't cease when in-person worship does is giving. They always want to set up your PayPal account or whatever, even though they're not going to offer in-person worship.
Yeah, so this is all a little discouraging, but I think most churches who have tried to be open have actually picked up visitors from these churches that are closed. Some churches have grown during this period, and have I think our church has had a good steady stream of visitors over the summer and fall. But I've heard that story in other places. There are churches growing, picking up members just because they bother to show up and do the best they can. And I think we even had I heard of a church that someone from out of state who was considering moving picked up this church's live stream, and they were impressed, and they thought, well, we could move anywhere. We'll just move there. I don't know if that has happened, but that's one of the minor, tiny, positive side effects of this thing.
Yeah, for those who really recognize the importance of in-person worship, it has only solidified that, and many more people are seeking that out. But it's a real sifting of the wheat, I think, what COVID has done for us.
Yeah, and video church is sort of, one of those things where you can, for churches like ours who have done it, it's because it's been a secondary contingency plan. Hey, this is, if you or your family members are sick, or if you're on vacation and you'd still like to, not be out of the loop when you come back the next week to hear the sermon, you can watch this or things like that. But when these other churches start doing it as their primary ministry, that's where, or like this is now the primary way that we're doing this. It's no surprise that you're going to see people leave or not come back, or suddenly look at their PayPal history and be like, I've been auto donating for how long? And I've gotten what exactly, like what actual benefit has I got from it? And, I think you can do a cost benefit analysis on something like that and make a decision. I don't think there's any sin in looking at that. It may actually cause you to make a better one.
All right. Are there any other grievances we need to air? Anything else we need to talk about along these lines?
Okay, so there's one. I want to. We weighed in on a little bit earlier with Dr. O'Neill, who you may know better as Shaq, and that is the grievance of how we're going about the whole Dr. Jill Biden discussion. Because everyone is debating whether or not she should be called doctor or not. And that's besides the point. The original point that's gotten lost in all of this is that if you know someone who's a medical doctor or a PhD, they want to be called whatever their first name is. But when you have someone who has any other type of doctorate, they want to be called doctor. Almost without exception. It is extremely rare. And so we've lost in this whole debate over whether or not she deserves it or not is the ignorance, the willful ignorance of the phenomenon that kind of caused it. So we are quite literally missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I tweeted a while back, putting your academic credentials in your Twitter handle is equivalent to putting your pronouns in your bio. If you see a comma, PhD, or a Dr. so-and-so in your Twitter handle, what are you doing? Who are you trying to impress here? Nobody cares. You're not going to have more attention because you have your academic credentials in your Twitter handle. The last thing I want is someone to call me doctor outside of an academic context. In the classroom, perfectly fine. It's appropriate. Anywhere else, forget it. Don't call me that. It's actually... it's not a sign of respect. It's actually, I don't want someone to do that. So if someone insisted on continuing to do that, to me, that'd be like, all right, knock it off. Call me by my first name. You can call me pastor. You can call me Dan. Don't call me doctor.
Well, the only exception to this, of course, is the great wrestler, Dr. Death, Steve Williams. We should continue to call him doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Death and Dr. Drew. Those are the only people I'll refer to in the formal
Don't forget the
title
Doctor of Style, Slick. The great manager from the 80s.
Yep.
A doctor of style. How many, we know plenty of Ed D's like Jill Biden. How many other doctors of style do you know?
Well, none for me. So
we know.
We didn't talk as much about liberty as a virtue and as something to be sought. Liberty is, I think liberty is considered to be selfish and too individualistic, many other things, but liberty liberty is good for our neighbors, and it's an under-examined good, I think, these days. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, again, this is Festivus. Of course, you know, our silly little holiday here is based on season 9, episode 10, the final season of Seinfeld, all of which we wouldn't.
Which is amazing to me every time I remember it. Like,
right,
all of this was the last run.
Yeah,
the last 3 months of the show, really.
Yeah, all of which we wouldn't recommend, but it's one of the cleaner Seinfelds. There's nothing, and there's 4 storylines going on, and masterfully done. I don't know that it could have been done any better. And the Festivus is just one of those 4 storylines. And at any rate, humor, the importance of humor in a year like we have now. What's the value of humor as far as helping us get along and get by and get through? And is it okay for Christians to have a sense of humor? And I figured out where the noise is, Dan. It's you. When I mute you, the noise is gone, but you're worth it.
The problem is when you mute Dan, the collective IQ points on this show are absolutely just slaughtered.
Well, I think humor is critical. Sadly, so many in evangelicalism, even in NAPARC circles, tend to be humorless and take themselves way too seriously. I think I've mentioned this before on the Presbycast, but one of the best things I learned from Dr. Robert Godfrey was he said, we take our theology seriously, but not ourselves. That's it, in a nutshell. We know what is critical, what we should fight for, what we should be serious about, and we know what shouldn't. And we shouldn't be serious about ourselves. We should laugh at ourselves, be self-deprecating, take a joke. But so many, sadly, seem to have a permanent sourpuss.
You know, Machen was a funny guy. He told funny stories, and he sang funny songs, and he climbed up on his desk, and he was a member of a club at Princeton, the Benham Club, and they did what was called stunting when they had their dinners, and that just meant funny stories or little skits or something, and you know, he could be a practical joker. He valued humor, but he was serious as a train wreck when the church and theology were involved. And so anyway, I think it's okay to be silly and to indulge in these humorous things. In fact, it almost exhibits a certain faith in God and another worldliness to know that we don't have to take everything so seriously. That much of it is out of our hands. We can trust our sovereign, and we can not worry about tomorrow, and we can have a good time within reason and according to God's law. But you know, I don't know how much humor there is in the Bible. There is some. We don't get some of it because we don't understand Hebrew, possibly. We don't get some of Paul's somewhat coarse analogies and allusions that he makes that might make some people blush. But I think there's still good grounds for Christian people being not just well, of course we're supposed to be joyful, which is a deep thing, but it's okay to employ humor too, and not certainly to not take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chodels, in that it is a testimony of our confidence in the sovereignty of God, and even just humanly speaking, it's a pressure release valve. You know, if you talk to people who are in extremely high stress, life or death situation, trauma, nurses and guys in the military and war and stuff, they have some of the sickest senses of humor that you'll ever come across. Yeah, gallows humor. It's been around forever. Even, you know, Jews in the Holocaust were known for their gallows humor. As humans, we have to have this. If we walk around 100% of the time with our fists clenched and our teeth, gritting our teeth, we're not going to make it. We have to have this release valve of humor. It is appropriate.
Yeah, I was talking to, we have an elder who's a former surgeon, and just talking about, you know, at a certain point, you somewhat gallows humor related, but when you're performing a surgery, you sort of have to compartmentalize away the fact that this is a human being lying in front of you, and you're essentially butchering them all to fix them. And it's like, as soon as you, you know, as soon as you let that like distinction fade, it can start to get kind of hairy. But also, like, you know, for those nurses, I mean, not just like an anger, not just a stress thing, but I think, man, if you were a trauma nurse and you had to watch, you know, let's say in an ordinary year, all of the people coming in with, you know, gunshots or other types of abuse injuries, or a friend of mine had a spouse who was a judge in family court, and she had to tell, you can't, like, I don't want to hear it in the house because I can't compartmentalize it. Like, it would just, it's a wonder that there aren't more suicides in professions like that. And I think gallows humor is a big reason for it. Like you said, it does serve a purpose, and it helps to just release that so that you can leave work, get in your car, go home, and be happy to see your kids.
Well, and people are different. There's no Christian personality type. That's one of those helpful things that Lloyd Jones said.
Right.
So not everybody's going to be a funny man, and not everyone. Well, there's going to be diversity, and we should accept that. But we shouldn't look down on the humorous side of the human condition. So, yeah, I think we can hold total depravity, and I think that humor can be helpful too.
Well, I think you're right in that there's no universal Christian personality, but at least in NAPARC churches, I think there is a universal characteristic of awkwardness. It seems to be pervasive. If you've ever been to an ecclesiastical meeting, awkward is at the forefront.
Something about the spectrum, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Just a dusting.
Yeah. Well, I've likened the PCA General Assembly to the cantina scene from Star Wars. It's not really like that, but it's yeah, you see all kinds.
There's probably a lot more White Claws at PCAGA than there were at Mos Eisley.
It could be.
That's at the monastery of all men down in the south there.
All right. Well, I hope there's been some humor and some helpful content. And again, here's a little program note. You can see a lot of the Festivus episode of Seinfeld, The Strike. That's the name of it. Most of it's on YouTube, but not officially. And I think they moved Seinfeld, being an NBC property, over to Peacock. That's NBC's new free streaming platform. And so I'm not advertising for them, but I think that's where you could go to see it. It'll probably be on. I'll throw in one politically correct travesty as we're wrapping up. I hate to bring in something so unpleasant as Christmas into a Festivus show, but I'm sure many of us have seen The Office, where Dwight dresses as Belschnickel, one of the friends of Saint Nicholas. And anyway, one of the funny thing about that is this Northern European legend, Belschnickel, this weird guy, he had a slave boy companion. It was just that was their idea of funny in northern Germany, apparently. And these are common in the kind of Santa Claus type characters in Northern Europe. And I saw an episode of The Office recently that had this Belschnickel character in it, and edited it out. The very funny moment when Dwight sends his friend or cousin who's dressed as this in blackface, who sends him away. That's edited out of the version now showing on television. And not to commend blackface, but really it was it did a good job of showing how ridiculous it was. But our politically correct sensibilities have they've canceled that.
Well,
So
even Steve Carell has said as much. I mean, there's no way The Office gets on the air today. I mean, it's, and we think of it as just such a like, oh, Saturday. It's almost like Saturday morning cartoons for us now. Is, you know, sitting around, binge a couple episodes of The Office, go about it. But like when, I mean, gosh, some of those moments in seasons 2 and 3, I just can't believe actually happened on television.
Yeah,
Prison Mike episode doesn't happen again in 2020.
Yeah, it's good to be reminded how much things have changed. So, well, Festivus abides, and everyone know that you can air your grievances and still be content, have Christian contentment, and have a good time with your family at Christmas, and wrestle if you want to. That's probably Resby's favorite part of Festivus is the wrestling, the feats of strength, and I'm sure he wrestles with his boys on Christmas and Festivus.
Yeah.
So any parting words?
A lot of top rope action from the sofa.
Yep. So Amish, Dan, anything you want to say to our friends before we say goodnight?
Happy Festivus, everyone. Don't pull a hammy when you're doing your feats of strength. Keep your grievances under an hour, and it will be a good time had by all.
Yep.
I just want to brag again because I don't feel like I got the credit that I deserved about prophesying TGC TV 2 years before it happened. So I had that going for me in 2020.
Yeah, we did a bit on that, and I was thinking about that recently, and we'll do some more of that sort of thing. And well, I think we're ready to say goodnight. Resby will do that. We'll thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Thanks everyone who watched along. Everyone who's going to force your family to listen to this in the 18-passenger van on the way to vacation or church on Sunday. We hope that you act within the law of liberty and play it loudly or softly, whichever your preference is. But thank you guys for listening, for Dan and for Amish for coming on. Again, we have said quite a bit of Happy Festivus, but we do want to also pay homage to sort of the Eastern Orthodox Festivus tradition, who gives the hail of may you have a bearable and manageable Festivus. Again, tinsel often too distracting. Happiness can also be too distracting. It is sort of the tinsel of words. So to everyone out there, may your Festivus be both manageable, bearable, and full of the feats of strength and airing of grievances. We will talk to you again, where we will also not be Erdmans.
Tradition says this time each year our grievances will fill the air. Disappointments made so clear, dashing hopes we held so dear. Let them have warm wishes and cheer. We can drink our ice-cold beer. Won't you please get on the bus? Join us in our Festivus. Pin your father to the ground, Mom and sis, you will astound. Men and boys proudly display feats of strength this Festivus day. From the rooftops through the town, there our voices will resound. Lift our spirits from the dust, spread the joy of Festivus.
Magic on the internet worldwide.